What's the vibe there on day 2, and what was it like hearing Kirby Smart talk?
Well, a lot of people looking at the off-the-field stuff that's happened at Georgia, obviously the tragedy that they had, the deaths that they had that were, on the road. You've had more guys now get in trouble. You look at Small London and all. We expected that to get asked in the big room. Nobody asked that. Now, you go to smaller rooms at SEC Media Days, and he was asked a couple things about it. And one interesting note, Kirby said that they won't be suspended, but they're going to get money taken away through the collective, which is something that we actually talked about, I think a couple weeks ago on Crain and Company. Would we see that in these NIL deals? And then the Ollie Gordon thing happened, which nobody asked Mike Gundy if any money got taken away. They just asked if he was going to be suspended during games, which we found out he wasn't. So I actually think that's more effective. When you hit somebody in their wallet, you typically get a firmer response or a corrected action. So I'm a big fan of that, and it actually shows some sort of structure between these contracts that these players are signing with these universities. But make no mistake, the vibe is that Georgia is the best team in the SEC, and that should be the vibe. And I sat down with Carson Beck, the fantastic interview. First off, he's bigger than he even looks during the game. He's a pretty big guy. But, they're confident, but they're also a little bit upset, and they're a little bit pissed off, and they should be. Because last year's team was the team that didn't make it 3 straight national championships. And I actually asked Carson about it, and I'm going to let him answer it. But, we've laughed in the past, Kirby's a master manipulator, a master motivator, which he is, and both of those things go hand in hand. But you don't have to manufacture any chip on the shoulder this year. Not only did you not make the college football playoff, you lost to Alabama in the SEC championship that bounced you from an opportunity to win a college football national championship with a 4-team playoff. With all the aspirations, even though you had turnover at the quarterback position and some other positions, Georgia still had one of the best rosters in college football last year. So this is a perfect storm if you're a Georgia fan to me. You look at the roster, it's one of the top 2 rosters in college football. I don't even think that's debatable. But now you have a team that's upset. You have a team that's on a mission. You have a team that feels like they failed in their highest endeavor. Not that last year was a complete failure. So it's a great time to be a Georgia fan. And after listening to Kirby, again, Kirby's not going to add any extra motivation to anybody. He's a master at this when he comes to media days, not giving any crazy bulletin board material. So the vibe is high and the vibe is strong at Georgia, and it should be.
Yeah, so I'm going to get Blaine to take Georgia's schedule up to the first bye week. But first, when we talk about players getting NIL money docked, rather than being suspended or coaches making players run gassers, how long until we see the first player sue the NCAA for saying you can't dock me my NIL money because we can't collectively bargain?
Nothing would shock me nowadays. I mean, it's probably going to happen in the Ivy League if it happens anywhere. But I would be surprised, because I don't think that player, because if you're getting NIL money, I don't think it's a crazy take to think you probably have NFL aspirations. I don't think you want to put a spotlight on the mistake that you made and then double down on dumb by making yourself look even worse by suing the place that you're playing at. I don't think if you were trying to go to the NFL, I mean, we talk about guys, being afraid to opt out of games or not playing the Senior Bowl or something like that. So I would be surprised, but not shocked with the current college football landscape. That would be something I think that would put the players' future in question, and the juice wouldn't be worth the squeeze.
You got Georgia's schedule over there?
I do. All right, I'm pretty sure they have an early bye week. Obviously, week 1, a big matchup. The spread last time I saw it's 13.5. That'll be against the Clemson Tigers. Remember last time we saw that game, it was like 7-0. Tennessee Tech week 2. Good luck to those guys. You go on the road at Kentucky. Then you hit your bye week. Then you're on the road at Bama. Auburn at home. Mississippi State at home. On the road at Texas. Florida at home at Ole Miss. Tennessee at home. UMass at home. And obviously you end the season with Georgia Tech.
Your thoughts, Jake?
Well, look, again, everybody's just going to go point to the Alabama game. And that makes sense. I think you got to point to the week before the Alabama game, though, and that bye week. That's massive for Georgia. Being able to have a bye week before you play in what, at least in the preseason, feels like your toughest opponent, and it's on the road, I think is massive. I think Georgia's going to kill Clemson. I think they're going to beat them to death. I don't know if Clemson's going to score more than 10 points. And guys, the crazy thing is some people are questioning, or one of the few questions are quote-unquote weaknesses, which I don't think it's a weakness, is Georgia up front on the defensive line. We talked with Rusty Manziel about this. I got a pretty good guess they're going to be really good. And with the players they have, their weaknesses would probably be considered other team strengths with that personnel. Now, having said that, a lot of what Georgia has to do, in my opinion, and I think it's interesting, is are you going to be more of an offensive-driven team because you're so talented, even though you lost Brock Bowers, right? Even though you lost Ladd McConkey, not enough people are talking about Oscar Delp and Ben Urisit, who came from Stanford, who's a pretty good tight end, but you got Ra Thomas. You got Dominic Lovett. I actually think Georgia's offense is going to be decently better than their defense, but their defense is still probably going to be top 5 to top 7 in the country. So when you have that much depth, injuries, you get worried, you get nervous, everybody does, but you look at the quarterback position, and even, God forbid, something were to happen to Carson Beck, I think they're still pretty deep at quarterback. I mean, Jaden Rashada transfers in. You look at Gunnar Stockton still there, even though we know Brock Vandergift transferred to Kentucky. So I don't want to overlook anybody, but there's no way you can look at that schedule and not say, all right, your eyes immediately go to the Bama game, because if Georgia's able to get past that one, which is going to be tough, we all know that, there's no reason why Georgia shouldn't go undefeated throughout the season. But it is the SEC. It is a gauntlet. It is a meat grinder. But I tell you, man, it's going to be tough for me to not pick Georgia every week, and I am all over Georgia minus 13.5 week 1. I don't think Clemson scores more than 10 points.
Well, Georgia gets Auburn in Athens this year, but did you guys hear what Kirby Smart had to say about having to go on the road and play Auburn at the Plains?
Did the Auburn game have on you guys this season last year, and what kind of challenges did that Auburn team and that new staff pose for y'all?
Well, let's start with this. Auburn is one of the hardest places to play in the world. And I know that from 25 years of being a common opponent at Georgia and Alabama. When you step in that stadium, you better be laced up, strapped up, and ready to go, regardless of their record, regardless of the expectation, regardless of what the people in Vegas say. You better be ready to play. And I think Hugh does a tremendous job motivating his team. He does a tremendous job in the recruiting asset. And as he gets more and more of his players and his style of play in there, which he got some guys this year, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. But that game helped give us confidence that we could play from behind. It also let us know that we're vulnerable in some areas, and we had to improve on those. So I enjoyed playing in that venue. I always have. It's one of the toughest places to go play.
Pretty much said that Auburn.
It's a real thing. It's a real thing. And a lot of people think, oh, Auburn's fans just say it because of this, because of that. No, I'm telling you, it's the Bermuda Triangle. Doesn't matter how good you are, what's on the side of your helmet. If you walk into Jordan-Hare, you don't know what's going to happen. Go over the last years, the biggest plays in college football have come out of where? They have come out of Jordan-Hare. Chris Davis, 109 yards. Ricardo Lewis catching that ball off of Trey Matthews from Georgia, who ended up signing with Auburn later in his career. So, look, Kirby's not making this stuff up. If you go to Jordan-Hare, it's built on an Indian burial ground. You don't know what's going to happen.
Were you there when he said those comments?
Well, and it was... Yeah, yes, I was, but it wasn't just him. Carson Beck, in one of his interviews, said it was one of the craziest environments he's ever played in. It was electric. I mean, he was giving glowing reviews on it. But here's the problem, and Blaine's exactly right. Yeah, when you go play in Jordan-Hare, you don't know what's going to happen. But as an Auburn fan, I don't know what's going to happen either. We may play Georgia close. We may play Bama close and then get blown out by New Mexico State. So as hostile of an environment as Jordan-Hare is, which it is, you take your Auburn hat off, take any bias you have off, ask any coach, and they will tell you, Auburn's got to start defending home turf better because they're not winning the games they're supposed to win in Jordan-Hare. And the crowd, I've said this multiple times, the crowd, and it's year one under Hugh Freeze. I mean, it's hard, even with a raucous crowd, when you don't have better players to beat teams. But that New Mexico State game, it was unacceptable. And he knows that, and they know that. The Auburn fans are going to do their part. I've said this a million times. They show up and they show out every single time. Auburn has got to get back the winning ways at Jordan-Hare in those big games, and they'll have some opportunities this season, starting with getting Cal at home, which, say what you want, it's not the biggest game. Jaden Ott's scarier than Nicolas Cage in the Longlegs movie. Then you got Oklahoma coming into Jordan-Hare week 5, which that's a huge one. That's a season setter if you're Auburn. So look, Kirby knows that. Everybody knows that. But Auburn's got to start winning important games at home again.
I'm going to ask this to you, Jake. Do you think Carson Beck will be the number 1 pick in the draft?
Well, guys, we got an interview with Jim Nagy coming up later in the week, who we had the executive director of the Senior Bowl, and he's really high on Carson Beck. You know, when he watches the tape, Carson does everything pretty well. It's funny because sometimes even older guys who waited their time to play, when they get on the field, it still takes them time to catch up to the speed of the actual game in those moments. Carson Beck really never had that. When you go watch the tape, the way he's able to move within the pocket, the way he's able to keep his eyes down the field, but he's not afraid to throw the check down. He's not greedy. And that is, I always say, the two greediest people on the planet are offensive coordinators and quarterbacks. But I think Carson Beck kind of goes against that. Now, when you have as much talent around him as you do, it makes it a little bit easier. But the old saying, David, and you know this better than anybody having played the position, you never go broke making a profit. And when you have a guy that has the physical attributes, he can make all the throws, he can throw the fastball, he can throw the changeup, he can throw the lollipop if he has to, and he can keep the play alive on the outside with his legs. But when you have a guy that makes good decisions at a team that is loaded with talented players, that is a recipe to beat people to sleep.
Jake got to sit down with Georgia starting quarterback Carson Beck. Let's go ahead and run that interview.
All right, the man of the hour, Carson Beck, starting quarterback, QB1 at Georgia. First off, Carson, thanks for joining us. The fit, it's elite.
Thank you.
You know, I told Jackson Dart, his was probably in first place yesterday. You're giving him a run for his money on that one. But man, I just want to ask you, in the transfer portal era that we're in, you know, you grew up watching college football like I did. It's changed a lot. You know, you could have gone somewhere else. You could have tried, you know, said, hey, I've stuck it out here long enough. I've given it a chance. What made you stay? And obviously it was a great decision. And, you know, what does Georgia mean to you?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me in staying was really not it was really more of like what I was leaving, you know. So obviously the standard that the University of Georgia has, the connection that I've built with my teammates, how hard it was to leave that was one of like the deciding factors of actually coming back, you know. Obviously that, and then having so much talent around and knowing that, you know, if we work hard and do the things that we're supposed to do, that we're going to be successful ultimately is another reason why I came
Well,
back.
I'm sure when you look at that offensive line, every time you see him, it probably makes you feel a little bit better
absolutely.
each time. Man, I know how competitive you are. You can't operate at the level you do at the place that you do unless you're just uber competitive. You guys last year got close, didn't do at the end what I know the goal is now with Kirby there at Georgia. I know you're always motivated, but what is the feeling like in that locker room of getting back, winning that national championship game again, and you being the quarterback that leads them?
Well, yeah, I mean, ultimately that's always the goal. Separate from what might have happened the season before, I think that standard and that goal is always the same. You know, approaching going into summer workouts, going into fall camp, going into the season, that's always going to remain the same, and that goal is always going to be the same. But for me, like obviously that'd be a very bittersweet moment. You know, we've won 2 national championships. I was on the sideline. You know, and I've said it before, but like obviously I want my own. Like, do I count those? To an extent, but not really. You know, I think the feeling would be a lot different to be the one out there on the field and actually take it home.
Well, they say it's one thing to be the lead singer, it's another thing to be the drummer, and you're obviously the lead singer now, and last year you jumped onto the scene. And my last question for you, Carson, is your growth has been immense. Obviously, you got to play to be able to grow, right, in the game. What is one area during this offseason when you go back and watch the tape, like, hey, man, I did a lot of good things. Here's where I had to improve?
I think for me, it's not even like a physical attribute in the game of football. You know, that comes with time, that comes with reps. I think for me is being able to grow into a leadership role and being more vocal and being that guy that is going to step up when the team needs. I think last year I really depended on Cedric, our center, to do that because, you know, he had the continuity with the team. He had built the trust. He had the respect from the teammates. And I felt like I hadn't really done anything. It was my first year as a starter. Like, I felt like I needed to earn that from my teammates. And now, you know, having a year under my belt and coming back, I think that I built that continuity and that I can step into that role for my team.
Well, Carson, man, good luck to you. I know you're expecting big things, and here's the good health, and thanks for stopping by. By the way, show the watch. Show the watch right there. This thing, I mean, straight out of a Yo Gotti music video. That's good, but thanks again, man. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Carson Beck, watch out.
Carson Beck, awesome interview, Jake. I love it.
What's up, everybody? Blaine Crain here with Crain & Company. Hit that like, hit that subscribe button. It really helps out the show, especially today after you watch Auburn beats Michigan's ass at home against in Jordan.